So when is it okay for us as a Christian to worship a man? If you're interested in this kind of thing, in secrets of the book of Revelation, stick around. Feel free to subscribe to this channel. Feel free to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I always like to read your comments. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And tonight we're going to be talking a little bit more about Elon Musk. We're going to be talking about NVIDIA and basically their role when it comes to artificial intelligence. So that should be pretty cool tonight. But I wanted to dive in a little bit into the book of Revelation. And I don't have my Bible on me right now. So yeah, I thought about this for a little bit. When we say the word worship, I think sometimes don't fully understand where we got the word worship from and what it exactly means. Because I could throw something out. I could say, oh man, let's worship this dog, or let's worship this person for all the work that they've done here. We would be like, most people would say, Shane, that is blasphemous. I don't know what that's just crazy. Why are you doing this? Why are you saying these things? Well, it's just because you don't understand the word worship. That's all that is. So if you understand that the word worship has several different meanings attached to it, if you go back to the root word of worship, it means adore. So if I say, oh, I adore this little dog, or I adore this person, or I adore this business, or this flower garden, or whatever it is, I think most people would go, okay, now I understand what you're saying. You're saying you actually like or appreciate this dog, this person, this garden. It's the same idea in worship. You can have different connotations depending on who you're talking to. So when it comes to the root word in Latin, adore, it depends who you're talking to. That word actually changes its meaning. So for example, when Jesus was walking on water, walking on the sea, the disciples thought he was a spirit. They're like, oh, it's a ghost, all this, and they were fearful. And Jesus basically said, don't be afraid, it's me. And then when he got into the boat, they worshiped him. They worshiped Jesus Christ. So I won't go into the exact spelling of the word, but the root word, adore, is in that word worshipped. So it just depends if it's past tense, present tense, future tense, all this kind of stuff, or depending on who the center of the object is. So for example, in this case, it's Jesus Christ. So that is deity. Basically, the disciples are acknowledging that Jesus Christ is their Messiah, their God, their Lord, their center of their universe. This is who they were worshiping. So that word is centered around Christ. If you look up the word worship in the book of Revelation, chapter 22, we see John looking at the angel after the angel basically shared everything, took him around, basically gave him a grand tour of the whole history of the future, if you will, of what's going to happen upon the earth. And John basically starts to worship this angelic type being. And the angel says, don't do it. And we look at it as, don't do it, man, we're in heaven right now. Don't worship me. And we're still not sure if this is an angel or if it is a human being that has a heavenly body, a spiritual body. And I'm leaning onto the latter. I'm thinking this is Daniel himself from the book of Daniel talking to John. Why? Because this is a human. He says, don't do it because I'm like you. I'm like your fellow servant. I'm like one of the brethren of the prophets. Well, where do the prophets come from? Well, a lot of them come from the Old Testament. So this is why I think this particular angel is Daniel. And if you think angel is only used for messengers from God, like with wings and everything, that type of angel, then you have to do a deep dive. Angel means also a messenger sent from God, but it could also be a human. It could also be an angelic being. Just like worship has different layers as well, depending who you're talking to. So John, I believe, was not worshiping this person. I believe what was happening was he was basically saying thank you in the way of awe, in the way of, this is amazing that you've showed me all these kinds of things, and I want to give you something for it, in that context. And basically this angel said, no, like, don't do it. Like, there's nothing you can give me, because this wasn't from me. This is from Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ wanted me to show you all of these things. So it's not from me. I didn't get this knowledge. It's from Christ. And I'm just showing you everything, and you're like me now. You know everything. So there's no need. There's nothing you can give me because I'm in heaven. I don't need anything from you. I don't need tributes. I don't need food, money, clothing. There's nothing you can give me. So don't do it. Don't do it. Why? Because I'm like you. You're like me. We're both on the same page here. John, you're on my level. What angel would say that to John? What angel would say, I'm like your fellow servants. I'm like the brethren. I am of the brethren of the prophets. Who would say that? What angel would say that? None of them. None of them would say that. So if you go back to Daniel, I think it's in Daniel 2:26, somewhere around there. It's basically Daniel reveals a dream to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar bows down to worship Daniel. Daniel doesn't correct him. So if you're thinking that the word worship in the book of Daniel is Nebuchadnezzar paying reference, or reverence, if you will, to Daniel, if Nebuchadnezzar is basically paying tribute, if you will, to Daniel in the form of worship, as in he's giving him rewards, he's giving him food, he's making him the top of there's 3 presidents in Babylon. Daniel's the top president. If you think that Nebuchadnezzar was worshiping Daniel, but or if you think he's not worshiping Daniel, but he's paying tribute and all this stuff, but suddenly when we get to the book of Revelation and we see John trying to do the same thing to Daniel, in this case, why are we like, oh no, he's worshiping this angel. He wants to worship this angel. Think about it for a second. Why would John, who puts his head on on Jesus's chest and says, who is he that's going to betray you? And Jesus confides in John and tells him and tells the disciples all things. Why do you think John in heaven, shown a vision, would worship an angel or a human being? Why do you think that he would do that when it's forbidden all the way back to the 10 Commandments not to worship any idols, anyone made of stone, anyone? No deities other than God himself. Why would you think John is doing that in heaven? And yet you give Nebuchadnezzar a pass saying, no, he's just paying tribute to Daniel. So that word worship means different things depending on the context. I think what was happening with Nebuchadnezzar to Daniel is the same thing as what was happening from John to this angel. And I'm like 95% sure it's Daniel. There's too many parallels in the book of Daniel and in the book of Revelation that make you go, you can't help but think that this person is Daniel. You just can't help it. You can't help it. And I'll dive deeper, but you have to understand that worship doesn't always mean that you're committing idolatry, because Daniel accepted what Nebuchadnezzar was doing to him. Think about it. One of the wisest men on the planet that worships God Almighty is allowing someone to worship him. It doesn't compute, right? So therefore, you have to dig deeper based on God's character. And I've been sharing that with a lot of my videos. You have to go deeper. Why? Because if you understand God's character and you're looking at a verse and something isn't making sense, you have to apply God's character to that. You have to understand who Daniel was. You have to understand who John was. They loved Jesus Christ. And I'm convinced that Daniel saw Jesus Christ. So to just, and we do this ordinarily. We do this on a day-to-day basis. We see a little child, a little baby come up to us. You know, a mother brings a baby in a stroller and we go, oh, how adorable. Oh, I just adore that little baby. We're not worshiping the baby. We're not. But when we're in church and we say, I adore you, I adore thee, we're talking about we are worshiping Jesus Christ. So the word adore takes on a new meaning. It's different. That's the same thing for the word worship. We think of it here in Western society as only one word. Oh, worship? Oh, that means worshiping God. And if you're worshiping a TV show like Friends, all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's idolatry. But you have to think about it. Like, I'm being facetious a little bit when I say Friends, because I always inject Friends into it. But think about it for a second. Like, if you say, again, just flip it over to the word adore. That's what worship is. Worship in Latin is the word adore. That's really what it is. So when you say, I adore Friends, I adore Rachel, I adore Ross, you're not saying you worship. It's in context of those people, what they're bringing to the table. Their acting, their looks, the way it was written, the way the series, the way all the seasons follow after one another. All this is what you're saying when you say adore. But we get quite religious when we read in the Bible and we go, oh, look at this, Nebuchadnezzar is worshiping Daniel and Daniel's not saying anything, so I closed the book. That's weird. And then we're reading in Revelation 22 that John's worshiping an angel and we're like, oh, that's weird. Why would John do that? Well, it's a good thing the angel told him not to worship. Whew. That was close for John because he's in heaven. And man, can you imagine if he worshiped an angel in heaven? Like, I think sometimes we're crazy. So the whole point of this is that there is a lot more going on in the book of Revelation and in the book of Daniel that you can't just read when you read it one time. And anybody that tells you that, they've probably never read the book of Daniel. You have to read it over and over again. You have to read the book of Revelation over and over again for the pieces to start fitting together. And really, you have to read the whole Bible. I can't tell you how many times in the last 2 years I've read the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, and I only feel that now I'm just starting to scratch the surface. Only now. Because I tell you, the first time I read Daniel and the first time I read Revelation, it was like, I don't know what's going on here. Just lots of symbols, lots of stuff, don't know what's going on. Now, when you read the book of Revelation, it's like, whoa, I see a lot of artificial intelligence. I see a lot of fallen angels. I see a lot of abomination of desolation, like lots of stuff happening in the future, and it's scattered all through the book of Revelation. All kinds of stuff. But you can't see it when you're reading one verse a day to get through the Bible in 10 years. You're not going to see it. But if you try the idea of sitting down and reading the entire book of Daniel, it might take you like 40 minutes or so. It might take you an hour to read the book of Revelation. Just practice sitting down and reading for one entire sitting. And then try doing it again the next day, and then the next day, and just try that for a little while. And all of a sudden, you could be reading the book of Ruth, and a light will come on about Matthew, or Mark, or John, or something in Genesis. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter what book you're reading, the lights will come on in regards to other books of the Bible. And you start seeing things that you never saw before. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'll share one little example of that. So this is what happens when people just read surface level. Like, for example, what was confusing to many Christians when they read that Jesus says that Zechariah was killed between the temple and the altar. And then you go back to 2 Chronicles and you see that Zechariah was not killed in front of the altar, but he was killed in the court of the king. But it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that Zechariah was killed in the court of the king. Instead, what it says in 2 Chronicles is there is a conspiracy with the king to stone Zechariah. That was what they wanted to do. They wanted to stone him. So they came up with the idea. They said, we got to kill Zechariah. We got to stone him to death. And they made that conspiracy in the court of the king. That's where it came up. So conspiracy, think about it for a second. You don't think of something and then start throwing stones. They planned it out. This is what the conspiracy was. It took time. It might have taken an hour. It could have taken an evening. It could have been 2-3 days. But they waited to the right time, and then they stoned Zechariah in between the temple and the altar. That's where they stoned him. How do we know this? Well, that's what Jesus Christ said. So if you understand the character of God, that God does not lie, you now have what happened to Zechariah exactly. And if you want to know how it began, it began as a conspiracy because they didn't like the word that Zechariah was preaching to them. So they said, we have to stone him. And that conspiracy was formed in the kingdom, in the king's court. That's where it came up, because a lot of major decisions are made in the king's court. They want to go to war. They want to do this. They want to do that. Whatever it is. They conspired. They came up with a game plan, and then they went and did it. Same thing with Judas. You think Judas betrayed Jesus Christ in 1 second? He just said, I'm going to do this? No. He hung out with the religious leaders, communed with them, probably, most likely on several occasions, and then decided or asked the question, what will you give me if I betray Jesus Christ? And they're like, okay, we'll give you, I think it was either 20 or 30 pieces of silver. It's like, okay. And then he went back till he saw an opportune time to betray Jesus. This doesn't take one day. We think this just happened after the Last Supper, that all of a sudden Judas is like, you know what? This is a good time now to think about this. No, he was planning this for a while. So why would you think that the conspiracy to kill Zechariah took place instantaneously? Why would you think that? It took time. That's why Jesus said, You guys killed Zechariah between the altar and the temple. That's where he died. So hopefully you understand a little bit more about what I'm dropping, and that is, you have to work at it. This is what works are. Yes, do I believe in works? Yes, I believe in works. To save you? No. To educate you? Yes. It's a lot of work to dive into the Bible and to study it diligently, morning, afternoon, evening, every single day. You have to study hard. Why? So that you can get to know Jesus Christ just a little bit better today than you did yesterday. So if you got something out of this, feel free to subscribe to this channel. Feel free to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to click on that notification bell as well. That way, anytime I upload a new video, you'll be notified immediately. Thanks for watching.